Hi, everyone. Welcome wherever you happen to be to Unstoppable Mindset. And, we've talked in all of the episodes about unstoppability. I've always maintained that everyone has a story to tell and that everyone at times does things to show how they're more unstoppable than they think they are. But more important, they show that they and all of us can be more unstoppable than we think we are. We underrate ourselves in terms of sometimes dealing with things. And I'm not saying that unstoppable means that you go out and do crazy things, but the fact is that we can be strong enough, or some people would say resilient enough, to be able to overcome the challenges that we sometimes face. Well, our guest today, Koen DeWitt, has had a fair amount of challenges, and I'm sure he's going to talk about a number of those as we go through this. Koen happens to be in Thailand, and so he is 14 hours ahead of us here. We're doing this at 4 in the afternoon in California, and it's 6 in the morning, now a little after 6 in the morning where he is, and he's already had breakfast. Boy, what can I say? Well, Koen, I want to welcome you to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really honored to have you. It's a real pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be here and share my story.
Well, why don't we start with kind of the early Koen, growing up and so on. You started in Belgium, as I recall.
Yes, that's correct. I'm Belgian, and I grew up in a fairly normal middle class family where everything looked like normal from the outside. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I have a sister who's 2 years older. In the 70s, when I grew up, like people still could afford have a decent lifestyle on a one income salary. But unfortunately, there was a lot of what I call emotional silence. I can't remember for the life of me ever getting a hug from my father or my mom. My father was quite distant. My mother was really more focused on herself than us. And there was alcohol abuse in my family. My mom, my grandparents, uncles. So it all looked normal, but like later on, I started realizing that those experiences shaped me later in life, and probably not always in the best possible way. How I learned to deal with it was turning inwards to myself, because I didn't want to cause any fights, because people that grow up in families where there's alcohol abuse, their emotions, they go all over the place. And then there was like screaming and all sorts of things that are children actually shouldn't be exposed to, in my opinion. So I learned to be quiet, like stay out of danger, try to be good. I read an awful lot of books. I'm quite intelligent, so that helped. But like, yeah, it is what it is. So that's really where the story of my character and my personality started. I didn't actually realize this until way later in my life, that this explains certain things that I'm doing, what I'm seeing, patterns I see in myself, like being an extreme introvert, for example. I don't like to talk about myself and my story. But then God has some sort of an intervention and put me in contact with you, which more or less I can do two things. I could have ignored the interview and just stay hidden, or I could go like, okay, I have to actually face this and maybe share this with other people, because they might recognize something of themselves in there, and that can help them. And you said like we are, like unstoppable, and indeed we're not Superman, but sometimes it's it's a process that you go through and that you actually don't even realize, because
Mhm.
you made me think, and looking back, like what actually has happened in the last 30, 40 years of my adult life. And then when I look back, I go like, holy smokes, really? I did go through all of that and I'm still more or less okay. Because it just happens under the surface. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does. Well, and you you raise some really interesting points with the life experiences you had growing up. Do you think that that gave you an inner strength, or can you trace back and see whether that occurred or not?
I don't know, to be honest.
Hmm. It's a
Because a
hard
lot,
question, and I can
yes,
understand that.
a lot of my awakening happened while I was already in Thailand, and there isn't really a very good support network to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or have somebody to talk to get some therapy. That network that doesn't really exist here.
Hmm.
So I'm more or less dealing it myself with it, try to get, do the best as I can and understand that these things happen in the past. They reflect on what I'm doing now, my own family, but being able to recognize them and say, like, hey, this is not cool. I should not be doing this regardless of my circumstances. I think that's important also.
What is interesting is that clearly, though, you are taking the time to think about it. You are looking at your life. You're looking at choices you made. You're looking at the experiences that you've had. And yes, you've come through a lot of those. And probably over time, you'll come to more conclusions about why you were able to do it. But the fact is that you are thinking about it. And I think that's one of the most important things. Most of us just go through life, we do what we do. We don't tend to think a lot. We don't tend to be very introspective and think about ourselves, why we do what we do, what can we do better. And so to hear you talk about it and the fact that you're obviously doing some of that, that's a good thing.
I think, yes, if you want to move forward and unstuck yourself, that's what you need to do. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
And the reality is, you're right. You have to unstick yourself no matter what. No one else can do it. People can guide
Mm,
you, people can give you advice or information that can help, but you still have to be the one to do it.
correct.
Yeah. So but you went to school, and did you go to college?
Yes, it's not university. I'm not really sure how this degree stacks up in the US educational system, but I finished high school and then I had 2 degrees beyond that, but not university level. I was bright enough to be able to go to university, but my parents, like more or less, said, no, we're not going to allow you to do that, because one of the ways how I rebelled as a teenager was hide my intellectual capacity.
Hmm.
So I would like the midterms, or there was 3 exams. There was the first one, the midterms, and then the end of year. And the way how they do that in Belgium, they take the average of all 3 of your results, and that's either a pass or a fail. So usually the first two exams I took were like atrocious, like really bad, below the mean. And then I realized, okay, for the last one, I have to push a little bit harder. And then I was in the top 2 or 3 of the students. So academically, everything was there. It was just like this inner blockage that, maybe on purpose, I don't know, that I didn't really want to put any effort in until it actually only mattered until the end. I
Mm-hmm.
always passed. I never had to resit an exam, never had to redo a year or anything. But obviously, that gave my parents the impression, like, yeah, he will not be able to go to university, which is very expensive, also in Belgium, just as it is in the US. So I
Yeah.
got two lesser degrees. But then, actually, when you start your corporate life, that piece of paper hanging on your wall isn't really, it opens maybe a door, but then it's basically up to you.
Yeah.
So I rose in the corporate ladder like pretty quick, up to a very high position before I was 30, just by pushing myself. And
And what did you
yeah,
do? What was the job?
I was working for 3M, the big American company. I was hired in one function that didn't turn out very well because the person that hired me went above the manager, and the manager wanted to have a lady, and all of a sudden he got a guy. So I was put in a different department where a very young kid, 22 years old, had direct access to the CEO. I was in the financial controller department, and one of my jobs was to make sure that they stuck within the budget. So 22-year-old guy had access to the CEO, all the top C-suite level executives, which was yeah, didn't phase me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, they saw I had a very good sales talent. I ended up in the sales department. I became a sales and marketing manager. And then from there, I got headhunted away to another company with a bigger salary, and so on. So my growth curve there was pretty rapid, very quick, but I wasn't happy. So when I turned 30, I had enough of the corporate world, and I was a qualified scuba diving instructor already, which was a hobby. I was just teaching people how to dive in the weekends, swimming pool in the evening, weekend trips out. And then I said, okay, this is my ticket out here. I don't have to stay in these cold lakes. Let's go to the tropics. And that's how I ended up in Thailand in 2000. So that's 25 years ago as a scuba diving instructor. And then from there, I had the same trajectory, found a good job straight away. And also in the scuba diving industry, there are several different levels. You have the normal instructors that teach beginners, but then you also have a whole other tier, like the instructors that teach the professionals, and even the instructor teachers, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I took also my diving career all the way to the top. That at one point I was working for the regional headquarters of SSI, which is the second biggest training agency in the world. Most people know PADI, but SSI is the second biggest American training agency, and I was working in the regional SSI headquarters, which interestingly was almost the same size as the US because it's a massive diving destination,
Right.
Southeast Asia. You have Thailand, you have Vietnam, you have Indonesia, Australia was on there also. So it's a huge market.
And you were living in Thailand by now?
Yes, I
Yeah.
was.
Now, I'm curious about something I was going to ask. When you were in high school, you took the first two exams every year and didn't do well, but you did really well on the final. Did that? I would think if you did that most every year, that would have raised a pattern in somebody's mind. Did anyone ever talk to you about that? Or did they figure
No,
it
not
out?
really.
They never figured it
No,
out.
no.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. Well, so you were in the diving world. I've never done any diving. One of these days I'm going to have to do that. I guess I'll have to come over there and let you teach me. We'll have to figure that out. But I've never done
Sure.
any kind of scuba diving or skin diving or anything like that. It just hasn't been one of those things that I've done. Um, but I would think it would be pretty fascinating to do.
It's very addictive because you more or less cut yourself off from the surface
Hmm.
world because you're there down just with your scuba tank. You're quite vulnerable because if that air supply is not there, we just have no ability to survive. But there's theories around that, why that would be. But what I've read and what I can concur to is that if you breathe out, first of all, you're much more conscious of your own breathing, and you have to control your breathing,
Hmm.
bring it low, like what they teach in meditation also. But at the same time, every time that you breathe out, you hear your own bubbles escaping, which is that noise that people are familiar with if they watch
Right,
underwater documentaries.
right.
And there are some theories is that that is actually also what a baby hears when they're still in the womb of the mother. So when it's protected, it is dark, it's in that nice warm place in the womb. I don't know if that's true, but I can attest that scuba diving is really very relaxing. And when you surface after an hour dive, you just feel different. You feel much more relaxed, more attuned with everything around you. So it is addictive, although it might scare people, but it is highly addictive.
Yeah.
And that's why for me it didn't matter whether it was in extreme cold water, low visibility in Europe, or in the Red Sea in Egypt, or the Caribbean. I've even dove off the Catalina Islands, off Ventura in California. I dove a little bit everywhere in the world, and for me, it didn't matter whether it's cold or dark. Is that feeling? Is that feeling and the relaxation that comes with it?
I I can imagine that I would focus. I wouldn't worry about being afraid, but it would be a different experience, and it would be, I think, fun to really explore that and do it. Of course, there are sharks and other things that I have to be careful about not touching, which is why it's always good to dive with someone. But by the same token, things happen, and we can also cope with so many things. I wouldn't want to run into a stingray on the bottom of the ocean floor.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
But the chances of that occurring are
are very
absolute
low.
minimal. Yeah, yeah.
Now, I wouldn't mind meeting a whale, but I've actually petted a whale before at SeaWorld. I had the
Okay.
opportunity to do that. Um, and I've been able to touch a dolphin's nose. I've not met any seals or sea lions or sea otters. It would be fun. I just consider most all of it an adventure, and I tend to like to view it that way, because it's a learning experience to meet these creatures that are different than we are. I use a guide dog, and working with a guide dog is all about developing a teaming relationship with some creature who thinks totally differently than you. And what you have to do is to be the one to bring the team together and get both parts of the team to work together and work well together. And that is very much
Yes.
a doable thing to do. So, so you, you clearly have experienced a lot of things. So you rose in the diving world, and all was going well. And then what happened?
Well, I botched the timeline a little bit here just to make it a little bit easier with the story. But yes, in the middle of my diving career, I was in the right place at the wrong time when the 2004 Asian tsunami struck. The older listeners probably will still remember that. The younger generation probably not anymore because that's now 21 years ago. But there was a huge earthquake, like the biggest earthquake to date, just off the shore in Indonesia,
How strong was
on
it?
Boxing.
Do you recall how strong it was?
It was 9 on the Richter scale.
Okay, yeah. So that was even a
So, and
little bit stronger than the
it
Russian
was
one. Yeah,
very close to the main, to one of the islands in Indonesia,
yeah.
and it was very shallow also. So it triggered
Yes.
this massive tsunami that traveled across the Pacific Ocean. It hit a dozen countries. It killed approximately 300,000 people, but there's
Hmm.
many more that were never accounted for and never found. So it was pretty. That was a pretty rough day, December the 26th, which was also high season in Thailand. This is like the busiest time of the year that you can have because everybody from Europe and a lot of people from the States also they
Hmm.
vacation in between Christmas and New Year. And I was right at the beach. So how I survived that in itself is a complete miracle. I did have a near death experience that I didn't really talk about for years. I kept
Hmm.
that inside me. Obviously, I was very badly injured. I spent almost 2 months in a hospital, had like 18 surgeries to get me back together again. I didn't lose any limbs, but it came close because I had huge wounds. They were obviously massively infected, but somehow, together with the doctors and the hospital, they managed to save everything. It's not 100%, but I still have two legs, two arms. All my toes are still there, although some of them looked like they were almost ripped off.
Mm.
So it wasn't a pretty sight, that's for sure.
Well, so you were hit by the tsunami.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I was
And
dragged inland for about 5 kilometers,
that's what I was going to
which
ask.
is, what is that in
About
miles?
3 miles.
3 miles, yeah. But this is not like a gentle
No.
a gentle thing in the ocean because there is debris everywhere. I got stuck underneath a car. I got squashed against a house. And luckily that wall collapsed because if that wall hadn't collapsed, then I would have been just been squashed to death.
Hmm.
And we're talking about an 18-meter wave. So how much is that in feet? Um, Not
Well,
sure. High.
yeah. It's pretty high. Um, and yeah, we recently had the Russian earthquake, and we did not
Yes,
really experience much in the way of a tsunami here, although I know it did approach some places. But tsunamis are very interesting things because they really only affect the shore and what's near the shore. If you're out in the middle of the ocean, you may feel it, but it's a different situation when you're dealing with very deep water, and it may raise up, but you don't have the experience of feeling it like when the water comes on shore, when it's a totally different kind of a situation.
correct.
And so you, yeah, you were brought inland a long way. And what happened, if I can ask? So when when the wave dropped you and receded, you stayed where you were, or what?
Well, I couldn't move
Yeah, I mean, but
because
you weren't dragged back out at all.
no, I wasn't. The way how these waves work it is not like a wave that crashes on the beach, like where you have like the white foam and then you have that curl and then it that's not a tsunami. A tsunami is a fast moving body of water
Yeah.
that keeps building up, building up, building up, building up, and pushing, 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 pushing. And then as soon as all the energy out of the wave is dissipated, there is like a lull area of a couple of minutes where nothing really moves before it starts to retreat and go back into the position where it was before, like
Yeah.
physics, action, reaction.
Right.
So in that lull, I was able to hold on to a palm leaf So that's how high it was. Like palm trees are quite tall in Thailand here. So
Yeah.
I climbed onto a palm leaf on the top of a palm tree. I am obviously medically trained and a medical first aid instructor also as part of my job. So I started doing a self-assessment. And oddly enough, I wasn't feeling any pain, but that's obviously the massive adrenaline rush. And then
Right.
I lift my left leg out of the water, and there is a huge gas from the top of my kneecap all the way down to my ankle, and I see my bone right there, and I go like, "Oh, that's not good."
That's not good.
So
Yeah.
somehow glass has had completely sliced through it. I had lots of cuts everywhere else also, and then I realized I have to get out of the water, and I somehow managed to climb over debris onto the mainland, which happened to be on a hill. So I was pushed all the way inland up, and there's some hills where I was 5 kilometers inland.
Mm.
So I crawled on the road on that hill, and then a local Thai person, completely in shock, sees these half-naked, bloodied zombie demon almost crawl out of the water. He grabbed me and pulled me away, and then it took hours and hours and hours before I got evacuated from that hill. But that's only the start of the story, because what happens afterwards is even more mind-boggling. I don't know if we have time for all of that, but I'm happy
You can talk
to
about
go
whatever
deeper into that
you
story.
you can talk about whatever you'd like and what you're comfortable with. It's fine.
So I was just extremely lucky, and I think the gods must have been on my side that day. I didn't get pierced by anything, because
Mm.
lots of people there had like metal bars and wooden sticks and all sorts of stuff like pierced their body just about anywhere where it could find its way through. I just had deep lacerations and deep infections.
Hmm.
There was a very small regional hospital in the resort town where I was staying. And obviously, with such a mass casualty event, they got literally completely swamped, that they
I'm
couldn't
sure they
handle
did.
at all the amount of casualties there were. And because from face value, there wasn't anything life threatening, I was just lying on the floor the whole night, because there were people that needed urgent surgery, which I totally, completely understand. But that also is a bed for infection and infestation
Hmm.
to start. So by the next morning, my wound, the smell that came out of there wasn't actually pretty normal anymore. So and that's where a second stroke of luck came in, that my wife managed to get an ambulance from the other side of Thailand, the other coast, which is only 300 kilometers away, on the side that wasn't hit. So I ended up in another hospital, and from there in another hospital, and from there a long way back. So several things that day went wrong, but a lot of other things went completely my way also,
Now,
amazingly.
where was your wife when the tsunami struck?
She was also working in a dive center, but she had the afternoon shift. You know, the shops in the tourist industry,
Right.
they stay open until 10 p.m. And she was on the 2 p.m., 10 p.m. Rotation. And she was still at home. And our
Ah,
house was close, but not near the beach. So, um, yeah, she could obviously hear, because it's like when that hits, it's like a freight train, like it's
yeah.
like a roaring jet engine type of noise, and then people screaming and running past our house. So then she realized, like, oh, okay, this is not good. But where I was 5 kilometers away, and that road was impassable. There was dead bodies everywhere, debris, mud. It was just like like a war zone.
And your house must have been high enough that it wasn't really damaged
Yes, it was further inland in an area that
and
wasn't
up. Yeah.
swamped. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
So how did she learn about you?
She didn't until very late in the evening because there was no telephones. Everything was gone,
Yeah.
like buildings that were there before, there was mud and debris, so nothing was recognizable. She didn't know where I was. She didn't know whether I survived
Yeah.
or not. But there were two or three what they called evacuation sites on a hill, which were like makeshift places where people just congregate, and able bodies were raiding pharmacies that were still standing to get any kind of bandage and first aid treatment that they could find. And they were then assisting people there on those so-called evacuation stations. And eventually, I ended up because somebody I knew found me on that hill, was able to carry me down together with another person, put me in the back of a car, and drove me to the other side on a hill to one of these
Mm.
evacuation sites, makeshift sites. And there, all of a sudden, my wife was there. She could have been anywhere. I could have gone anywhere. But for some reason, we ended up in the same place at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And the thing happened at 10 a.m. So
Yeah.
we're talking hours later. So yeah, that's how we reunited. And I said, like, don't be alarmed. Take that bandage off that somebody on the hill put on my leg, and go and grab some alcohol and just pour it in, because I knew that if I wasn't going to do anything that day, it would be really bad. So
Yeah.
she got a bottle of pure alcohol from
Oh,
somewhere.
that must
I
have
poured
hurt.
that in. Well, to the point of fainting, but I knew I had to
Yeah.
do it because that's what's in that water is very serious, because sewage,
Oh, sure.
everything gets mixed in there. So if that goes into your body, a lot of people died from post-injury blood infections
Yeah.
because of
They
the
didn't get
bugs.
treated
Yeah.
fast enough. Yeah.
Yes.
And she didn't say anything like, well, I always knew you were ugly, but you've gone a little bit too far.
No, not
She didn't
really.
do that, huh?
No, no, no.
Just checking. Well, yeah, but still, in all seriousness, it's I don't want to say it's easy to make light of it now, but I understand what you had to go through. My wife didn't know about my situation for a while. She knew that we were evacuating from the World Trade Center because I called her before we left the office. But all the way down in the stairwell, there was no phone access. There wouldn't be. And then when we got outside, I tried to call her, but the circuits were all busy because, of course, people were saying goodbye to loved ones who were trapped up in the towers who would not escape. And so she didn't know anything about my situation until after both towers fell. And only then I was able to reach her on the phone, and what things went from there. And what she told me was that she made a decision. She said, I didn't know whether you were going to be alive or what was going to happen, so I made the decision that people were going to probably come to the house and want to know what was going on with me. And so she said she worked on cleaning up the house a little bit and things like that, but she made the decision that she had to do something to keep busy because otherwise she would worry. So, I understand where she was coming from, and I understand the challenges your wife had to have, and I'm glad that you guys did make connections again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
So yeah, what I was I wanted to lead into the next story because obviously this was completely life-changing.
Sure.
I had this easy job, like being out on the ocean every day, sharing my passion, teaching people how to scuba dive, introducing them to this magnificent world, and that nice feeling that we spoke about earlier in the call. But I was too injured to be able to continue that. You know, my body wouldn't be able to tolerate because diving every single day is quite intense on your body. So with all the injuries, that wasn't possible. So what was I supposed to do? And this is how I ended up getting the opportunity to invest and become a part owner in a dive center in Thailand, one that wasn't doing very well. They needed somebody to turn those fortunes around. They tried with managers before, but the owners also realized if people have a vested interest, the whole dynamics change. So I invested a small amount of money. It wasn't even that much. I turned that business around. We became hugely successful. I ended up, to cut a long story short, because that's 10 years, I ended up owning or being a partner in 3 different dive centers in 2 different countries. 2 in Thailand on opposite coasts, and 1 in Indonesia.
Well, you took a major step to do that. How did you move forward from the tsunami and all the things that happened to you? What did you do mentally and physically? Obviously, you went through healing, but mentally, that had to be a major shift to be able to continue to move forward. Because I can imagine so many people would just pity themselves, or well, I can't do anything. You clearly didn't do that.
Yeah, this is a little bit what I alluded to in the beginning, where I said like stuff just seems to happen, and you just start doing things without actually much thoughts or realizing, and then afterwards, when you look back and you go like, "Holy moly, did I really do all that?" Like from being a carefree scuba diving instructor who walked away from a highly paid corporate job because I hated it, to then having upended that part in like 2 or 3 years, because I left in 2000 and the tsunami happened in 2004. So I only had that carefree life for a handful of years, and then become an entrepreneur slash business owner. But I didn't really think about that. You know, it just kind of happened, and without reflection, that one day I wake up on my hospital bed and think like, maybe I should invest in a diet. No, it just, these opportunities just sort of happened, because I could have gone back home to Belgium and maybe draw on Social Security, but I was still young. I was only 34, and I left Belgium because I didn't particularly enjoy the life that I was living there. And I wasn't ready to give that up. Like diving was my passion, and I was like trying to figure out like how can I stay in. And the first job I got after the tsunami was actually working as a manager in a big scuba retail dive shop that was selling diving equipment. And then from there, on that particular island, which was or still is a top diving destination in the world, one of the owners of a dive shop came like, "You're actually too good to just sell masks, fins, snorkels, and breathing apparatus. Why don't you manage a dive center and become owner of a dive center?" And then I was like going, well, okay. But I'd never done that. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to, but I didn't have any fear. I go like, okay, just, yeah, let's try. Can't be that difficult. It turned out it wasn't that as easy as you think, but it wasn't really fear wasn't really holding me back. I thought like, look, I survived this whole tsunami kind of stuff. What can be worse than that? So, but yeah, there was no real conscious, real decision of reflection, or it just happened. And then from there, we were starting to make too much money. So there was then jealousy because I had certain provisions in my contract that if we reached certain thresholds, certain bonuses were going to be paid out. But then other owners was like, hey, he's making too much money. There's always
Yeah,
some.
there is always that.
When it comes
But
down to money, people have really very funny things. They didn't realize that 2 years prior, their business was on the verge of collapse,
they forgot
bankruptcy.
that.
They were going to lose everything. Yeah, they forgot conveniently that part. And then from there, things started to sour. And that happened in the later on in my life also, that I like wonder, like, why is this? Like, what is wrong with people that they can't just realize how lucky they are and what they have, and that somehow, those green pieces of paper somehow corrupt people's minds to
Hmm.
a state where they don't do rational things.
Yeah. Were you back diving at all by this time, or were you still healing physically?
Well, this was no, physically I was more or less okay, although I still don't have a lot of feeling in one foot. I don't have the full flexion in my ankle anymore. So the day to day would have been too stressful on my body, especially the lower part of my body.
Hmm.
But this is where I took my diving career to the next level. So then I got this opportunity to become an SSI instructor trainer, because I had the experience, because at that stage I've already been teaching scuba diving for 10 years. In
Hmm.
2004 I started in 95. So this is where then I couldn't do the beginners day to day anymore, but then I got the opportunity to start teaching the much higher levels. So while I was managing the dive shop, I was also allowed to do that through the dive center. So that's how I kept on diving, but not every single day anymore. Physically, it was not possible.
Right. That that's understandable. Um, so you you have been pretty successful, and one of the things that comes to mind is that you've been successful, but I wonder what other kinds of survival patterns and survival things did just being successful mask, or what else is going on that maybe you weren't consciously thinking about, but subconsciously you were, that helped you survive?
That's a hard question. I don't know. I think if I have to self-analyze myself, I found solace in performance and showing myself that I would be able to do that. Like start things that I normally wouldn't have, or I didn't think that I would be able to pull off. Um, and then just run with it and start
Hmm.
over delivering. Like I'm a perfectionist to the core. So also when I work with clients now, because I'm doing something totally different, I'm in the digital marketing world now, where I also deal with clients, where I take on projects that like, I've actually never done this before, but I think I can, and I think I know a way how to do it, and then go on that discovery journey, completely ace it, and then also over deliver on that. So constantly moving your bar higher and further away. I think that has been my escape,
Mm.
like through that kind of physical perform. I can't run a marathon, for example, but there are certain things that I can do with my brain. Like this is my biggest asset is my brain and my ability to see things, to make connections, and then having that self-belief, although that sometimes gets shaken also because I'm not made of iron. So I do have days where I wonder, like, what the heck am I doing? And is this the right path? And all these things.
But something must come
But
along
I think
and tell you to keep going.
it's like, yeah, I have no responsibility. I have a son who goes to an international school here in Thailand. These things aren't cheap. So I have that drive. I'm not doing anything for myself anymore. It's for other people around me. It's
Okay.
my son. It's also my Thai wife's family, because in Thailand here the whole social structure is very different. It used to be like that in the Western world also, but we kind of more or less moved away from that because the government has now taken over a lot of parts of the family taking care of their elderly.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have a responsibility to my in-laws, for example, who are dirt poor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not about me at all anymore.
Well, after the tsunami and so on, and you went to work and were owning part of a dive center and so on, how long did all that last? Because as you pointed out, at some point you changed what you were doing.
Yeah, about 15 years. So I
So,
built that. I built these things up in 15 years, and then infighting, internal betrayal, and I tend to not want to get involved in conflicts. So when maybe I can be easily bullied. I don't know. I wouldn't really describe it like that, but like I want to put myself higher and above all the pettiness and go like, you know what? If this is really how you feel, what you guys think, no worries. I'm out of here.
yeah.
And so I turned my back on it. And what I had to do, especially in my first steps as an entrepreneur, it was in 2004, 2005, that like internet was still fairly new. A lot of people didn't really know how to use the internet. So I built a website, I did online marketing, and I pulled in a lot of clients for the diving center before they even set foot in Thailand.
Right.
Like most dive shops at that time, they were standing at the pier where the boats would come in with their boards and their banners and their flags, trying to like jump people and like, come dive here, come spend your money here, we are the best. And we were like total chill because 75% of our business was already pre-booked.
Yeah. It was
So even
online.
if
Yeah.
we didn't get a daily inflow, we were still being okay. And most of the times we were running at 85, 95% capacity easily. And we didn't have that daily constant struggle what all the others were doing. So I learned all these things over the years. And then you get better, you dive deeper, websites evolve, internet evolves, then Facebook ads and Google ads that all became
Mm-hmm.
a lot more mainstream, and so on. So eventually, I didn't really know what to do. And then a friend approached me and said, like, hey, I need help with this. I know you can do this. Can you help? So I started helping friends just for, as they say, for what did they say, like shits and giggles? Maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't use that word,
That's all right.
but basically for free. And then I realized, like, hang on a minute, there's a whole world of people out there that need help, and there's other people that actually charge people for their services. And that's how I got into the whole digital marketing, copywriting world, and that's the business that I run now from
Mm-hmm.
Thailand.
So when did you
It's
start
all
that
online
business?
in 2016.
Okay. Wow. And so you started doing digital marketing, and you by 2016 you hadn't totally gotten rid of the dive connection yet.
No, no. That happened in 2018,
Yeah.
when there were lawyers involved and lawsuits, and we basically, our lawyers said, like, look, this is a case that you can win 100%, but it might take a couple of years. And what I've seen with my clients, I mean, when are you gonna come across a lawyer who actually talks you out of hiring them, which in
Yeah.
itself is amazing?
Yeah.
And he said, like, we can take the case. You have nothing is 100%, but you have a 99% chance of winning this. But what I've seen with my clients is that the emotional toll that
Mm-hmm.
comes with it for 2, 3, 4 years is actually not worth it. So
Yeah.
if I were you, I would just drop it and walk away. And I said, okay, that's what we'll do. We'll just drop it and we'll walk away. And we gave it all back, wished them good luck. And then obviously there is always a higher institute that gets involved. Things started to go bad for them. And then we also had COVID, which
Mm.
shut down everything.
Yeah.
And there was no more tourism, there were no more tourists. And in the diving industry, it's a very equipment intensive industry. So you need to run a boat, you need to have compressors, you need to have this, you need to have that. And if something breaks, it's a lot of money. That's not easy to replace. So you have a high capital investment, high running costs, and if you don't have the income, then it goes downhill very, very fast.
But you, on the
So
other hand, had gone into another business where you didn't have to rely
yes,
on all of that.
it was extremely painful and extremely stressful, because seeing things that you've more or less helped build up from the ground for 10, 15 years almost, like seeing that disappear and go like, okay, what now? And what also happened in the meantime is that I had open heart surgery. And the open heart surgery was the result of the infection I got on my heart in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2011, they had to put in a titanium heart valve
Mm.
in my aorta because it was damaged from the infection in 2004. And that's a very slow process. That's why it went unseen for years and years and years. And it was like the tail hit me again, like 7 years after everything happened. So yeah, that was
Did
another side story that I didn't mention
did
yet.
did they have to do open heart surgery?
Yes, I was
Yeah.
41
Yeah.
at that time.
So I asked that because I'm familiar with some of that. In maybe 2003 or 2004, had a physical exam, including an echocardiogram, and they said, you have a leaky heart valve. It's not really bad. It's just a little. It may never be an issue, but it might be an issue. Well, it became an issue on December 23rd of last year. And I actually had to go through and have an atrial heart valve replacement. But they didn't have to do it by then with open heart surgery. They could go up through the groin and
Yes, yes.
the arteries, the femoral artery and the femoral vein. So the surgery only took about an hour or so because I've always worked at eating pretty well. So the veins and the arteries were really good, and the surgery went well, and all is good. But I'm familiar with the concept and understand what you're saying.
Yeah, these are new techniques because I read them, I think a couple of years ago, uh, what's his name? Jagger, the Rolling Stone.
Yeah,
What's his
Nick
first
Jagger,
name?
Mick
Mick
Jagger.
Jagger. It had the same thing. It had the
Oh,
same thing. And I was reading the news, the article in the BBC, on the BBC website, and it said like, oh, they did it they call it laparoscopical. So they go in through the vein, and I was like going, oh shoot, like, because I still have problems with because the sternum
yeah,
is one of the hardest bones
yeah,
in your chest. It still hurts right now. I feel it. So that pain has never gone away. And my surgery was 10 plus hours. And
yeah.
when I read the surgery report afterwards, where they like in medical terms, like very clinically explain what happened, and that at 10:10 the patient's heart was stopped, and I was like, oh shoot, I was actually dead also, because obviously they have to stop your heart to be able to do the surgery when they do it that way, and then the heart-lung machine takes over. The issue is that they might not be able to restart your heart afterwards. They just don't know, like mostly yes, but in some rare cases can happen that they can't restart the heart.
Well,
So,
the procedure that we that I went through is called TAVR, transatrial valve replacement, transcatheter atrial valve replacement,
yeah,
and it was developed in 2011, but then they only used it for really at-risk patients.
yeah,
I wouldn't have been eligible then, but then they opened it, and apparently, according to my doctors, in 2017 to other kinds of people. And so in March of 2025, it was available, and it was the way to do it. And they don't stop your heart when they're putting in the new valve. What
yeah,
they actually do is something very fascinating. The replacement valve goes up through the femoral artery, but they also run a wire through your femoral vein to the heart. And that wire is essentially part of a pacemaker. And what they do when they're ready to position the valve, which doesn't take long, they actually speed up your valve, as my doctor said, to about 175 beats per minute rather than stopping the heart. But by speeding it up so fast, the heart doesn't really move. So they're able to put the valve in place, and within about 5 seconds, then they can slow your heart back down. But they never stop the heart. It's fascinating. Man, it worked.
interesting. Yeah. So the technology, I was a couple of years too early
Yeah,
for
things
that.
happen.
Yeah. What can you do?
But
I'm still here.
you are, and you have done a lot of things, and clearly you have um, continued to be successful. How do people break the loop of performance-based work? Because that has its own challenges.
Yes, that's one. That's my next big Mount Everest to climb. Like, because performance-based work is you have to show up, you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no passive income stream, which gives you some more security. How to break that is, I guess, in what I'm doing in my field now is to package your expertise and sell it either in the form of a course or a coaching program. Then it becomes a do it yourself kind of option. Now it's I'm in the done for you. I'm doing all the work for you, and you pay me for the work. Or in some cases is done with you. I do parts of it, explain you how to do the rest, and then you take over. I think that's what you're alluding to. I hope. If not, I've misunderstood the
Yeah.
question. But yes, like to move away from that, you need to somehow package it in such a way that you can empower people to do it themselves. And obviously, you can sell that more at scale because there's only one of me or only one of you. So there is only that many people that you can help. But if you package it and you sell it, then you can do this at scale, because then you can multiply that,
Well,
because there's no direct involvement.
the other part about it is that if people have the opportunity to do something and can in some way take partial ownership of what they're doing, they're going to do it because they want to be successful. They're going to do it because it will make everyone successful. And I believe that that is really what we need to do a lot more than we do. It is about the team, much more than we tend to emphasize. And the whole team working together will always do more than individuals will by themselves. So the sum of the parts isn't nearly as great as the whole, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah,
And there's also that element of self accomplishment, like feeling that you
exactly.
have done something and that you overcome something and like, wow, I created this, I made this, and then you start believing more and more in yourself also. And I think maybe that's one of the driving parts behind my success is that I've always pushed myself, and sometimes it didn't work out, and you just have to learn from your mistakes and stay positive all the time. Everything that happens, because like all the betrayal, because then afterwards also this journey into the digital marketing also wasn't without its betrayal, because then I got scammed in a fake franchise, for example. I lost that money, and then on top of that, I got done by the lawyer who was supposed to represent me also for
Mm,
another like $5,000, $6,000. It's like just
yeah,
unbelievable. But you can't sit still and like roll around in your own self-pity. It's like, okay, why do I have to go through this? What is the bigger picture here? And if I wouldn't have gone through this fake scam franchise, then certain other parts, such certain other paths wouldn't have opened up for me. Because
You
having
learn.
gone through that, I saw something different and I go like, hang on a second. So, because there were numerous other people involved, and they were all really very negative and like, oh, let's go and get that dirty, filthy, low life piece of you know what. And I was like going, hang on, guys, like all this negative energy, you have all that energy. How can we use that in a positive way? And just
Yeah,
like, because if you become too negative, and then you get completely absorbed in it and you don't see anything else.
yeah.
And I managed to, despite all that and losing all that money, I still managed to see through it. And then another door opened up. And that wouldn't have happened if this episode wouldn't have occurred to me. So there's always two sides of everything. And it's how you deal with the circumstances that will then determine the outcome that you have.
Well, it always comes back to making choices, and it comes back to there are things that happen to us that we don't have control over, but we always have control over how we deal with what happens to us. And clearly,
Absolutely.
you deal with that very well, and you continue to be self-analytical, and you think about yourself and how do you progress. Well, if somebody is listening who's in kind of a hard or bad place, what's one truth that you want them to hold on to? Maybe we just said it, but
Um,
what would that be?
yeah, never don't give up. There's always a reason why something happens to you, and you need to step back from all the negative emotions and grief that might overwhelm you. I know it's easier said than done,
Yeah,
but if you can do that, that doesn't mean that you can't grieve, that you can't be angry, but it shouldn't become all consuming that you forget everything else, that
yeah,
you forget to look like, okay, like maybe it doesn't make sense then, like why would God even do that to me? But maybe because you were meant for a higher purpose, and you need to go through this shock to be able to step into your higher purpose, what you are put on this planet to accomplish. And that can only sometimes be done in quite an aggressive, negative way, how that we perceive it.
yeah, exactly. Well, so you do digital marketing help and so on. Do you do it all over the world?
Yes, most of my clients are actually based in the US,
So how do people reach out
UK,
to
and
you if they'd
Australia.
like? How do people contact you if they want to reach out to you?
They can visit my website. They can also email me.
And what's
So
your
that's the
website?
best way to reach out.
What's your
It's
website?
thefunneltherapist.com.
thefunneltherapist.com.
In one word, yes.
Right. And email, you mentioned, how do they reach out to you that way?
That's a Koen, that's Koen, so that's my first name, at thefunneltherapist.com, again, in
There you
one
go.
word.
Well, I hope people will reach out. You've clearly demonstrated that you are able to make commitments and keep them, and when things happen, you can move forward, which is as good a definition for right now of unstoppable as it gets. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and talking with us. It's now been over an hour. We've had a lot of fun doing this. Well, I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank all of you for listening and watching and being here. Please reach out to Koen. I'm sure that he would love to chat with you and help with marketing things, because clearly he knows what he's doing. I want to also ask you, if you have any thoughts or would like to reach out to me, feel free to do so. You can reach me at Michael H.I., Michaelhi at Accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com. Or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. Michael Hingson is spelled MICHAELHINGSON.com/podcast. There's a contact form there as well. But we really appreciate you listening. Please give us a 5-star rating wherever you're watching or listening to our podcast. And if you know anyone else who ought to be a guest, please introduce us, and Koen, you as well. If you know some people that you think we should have on the podcast, we're always looking for more guests to come on. But I want to just thank you one more time for being here. This has been absolutely a joy, and I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me and listening to my long story.